Hello everyone, and welcome to my talk on fair and efficient democratic decisions via non-deterministic proportional consensus. In polycentric governance, there's a lot of reasons why one needs to make collective decisions. You have to choose from a menu of options like actions, strategies, policies, and so on, oftentimes. You might have to allocate some resource or budget, time, money, and so on. You have to elect officers, delegates, and so on. There's certain challenges involved in doing these decisions via assemblies or committees or officers, and those have to do with power. There's always informal power structures, and also one has to decide how to formally allocate power. There's the issue of anonymity, privacy, minority protection. Often it's not clear how legitimate decisions are if they're made via a certain procedure. And then the representativity of committees or officers is also an issue. You have to do some trade-offs in these decisions, and they come as certain contrasts, for example, between informal or more formal procedures, between seeking consensus or rather following majority principle, between focusing on the needs of minorities or focusing on the common interests of the group, focusing on having a very fair method or rather a very efficient method, and so on. When doing consensus seeking, there's all kinds of different procedures that exist for this, and you might know many of those, and they're often used in smaller groups and might lead to high legitimacy and edification, also stabilize the group because they're typically very inclusive. Of course, they also have potential issues. They're often time-consuming. They might lead to consensus only by exhaustion. They have a bias towards the status quo. Then in a group, people might have very different communication styles, and there might be very dominant individuals. There's lacking anonymity, typically. This might be perceived as a form of pressure or lead to group pressure. People might fear sanctions. The goal here is to help alleviate these issues by combining existing consensus-seeking procedures with a suitable voting method that I'm developing. So formal voting methods also exist in large numbers. Almost all of the existing methods, however, are majoritarian. That means a majority can always enforce their will if they want to. That leads to certain issues, of course, that might permanently disempower minorities. It might lead to a kind of tyranny of the majority. This can be seen as a lacking fairness and might lead to a large inequality in the group members' need satisfaction. That might also lead to conflicts, breakup, violence, separatism, and so on. Also, majorities don't necessarily have an incentive to identify a good compromise option because they can just get their will, and therefore the outcomes might be of low quality or might not be optimal in a sense, and that is a form of lacking efficiency. So the challenge here is to design a fair and but still efficient voting method that can help finding consensus. So how to do this? More particularly, the design goals here are to give every group member an incentive to bring about a good consensus. Also to give everyone the same effective power, not just formal power on paper, like in one person, one vote, but really the same effective power to influence the outcome. Also, we want to take every group member's views and interests into account, of course, and make sure that no one can simply be ignored. Our approach is to combine suitable ingredients from existing voting methods, for example, approval voting, and to combine it with the idea of conditional commitments and to add some level of interactivity. The result is a formal voting method that we called maximum partial consensus and a corresponding social app we called Vodal. And how do you use maximum partial consensus and the Vodal app to find consensus? So this is just a rough sketch, but the basic idea is this: you collect and discuss an initial set of options as you would normally do, and then you let every group member rate each of these options. So you give a rating between 0 and 100, and you do this for every option. What these mean we will see in a minute. Then the Vodal app identifies all the options' consensus potential and calculates their winning probability in a certain way. Then based on this, you see what the consensus potential is, and you might feel necessary to add further options you identify in discussion further compromise and consensus options, and you add them to the app, and you also rate those. You might also adjust your ratings of the existing options and so on. And as a consequence of this, you see how the consensus potential and the winning probabilities shown in the app change. You see this in real time. And then at some deadline, finally, the Vodal app determines the actual winning option on the basis of all these final ratings. It does so in a way that ensures fairness and protects minorities. So it doesn't just add up the ratings, because that would give us a majoritarian method after all. It uses the ratings in a more subtle way, and we will see how here. So how does it do it? Here's a sketch how a single voter named Alice here would see the Vodal app. She sees a number of options here. Those are all the options that are currently on the menu, just numbered A to E here for simplicity. And she can rate these options by moving this needle pin from the left to the right. So for example, option C is currently rated at 13 by her, and that means that if less than 13% disapprove this option, C, then Alice will approve the option C. This is kind of a conditional commitment made by Alice to approve C if enough others approve C as well. Currently, 80% do approve C. This can be seen from the gray bar coming in from the right. Why 80%? Vodal takes all the ratings for C by all the voters and sorts them. You can see this on the diagram to the top right, and determines a certain cutoff, and everyone who has a rating larger than the cutoff approves the option. Everyone lower doesn't approve. Alice doesn't approve currently, and this can also be seen by noticing that the needle by Alice, this 13 point needle, does not overlap the 80% approval score here. Option E, for example, rated at 50 by Alice, is approved by Alice because 60% approve it, and 50 per 60 is more than 100. You see that this pin overlaps the bar, and this means that Alice currently approves this option. If you rate an option at 100, as Alice did for option A here, then it just means you always approve, and if you rate it at 0, then you never approve. So this is how the ratings are turned into approval, and then eventually they're also turned into winning chances, which are shown on the left at these pie charts. This is a little bit more subtle, which ensures everyone has this proportional power, and the details can be seen in this publication cited here in SSRN. So currently option C has an 80% winning chance. So if the deadline would approach now, then C has the largest chance to actually win. So our results so far are both theoretical and simulation based. In theory, we could show that maximum partial consensus method distributes power indeed much more equally than other voting methods. In simulations, we could show that it also produces less inequality in the group members' need satisfaction. And we even did a behavioral experiment. We didn't publish it yet. It's in preparation. And there we let people try out these methods, this method and also a very simple majority voting method, and asked them which they liked better after trying it. And it turned out that, first of all, most people could understand the method sufficiently well within a few minutes, even though it's a little bit more complicated. And after testing it, many of them actually preferred this method, even though it was more complicated. And only a few people found it hard to accept that in this method, not always a majority can get their will. The state of the whole project is that there's a prototype of the Vodal app, but as in all software development projects, it's a lot of work, so we need collaborators to make it production ready. We also need early adopters to test it in the real world, so with real problems. It can be used for committees and assemblies, choose options or allocate resources and so on. We also have ideas for combining the method with in-person procedures. And then the funding is currently only institutional, so we want to explore other funding options as well. I hope you like this idea, have questions, comments, and mostly I hope that maybe some of you want to collaborate on this. If so, then just send me an email. Here's my email address, and please also check out the website of the Vodal app, vodal.it. Thank you.